So anyway, look, I mean, music-wise, it's all about music, isn't it? Guitars.
It is.
It's all about music and guitar. So what music excites Ross? What sort of music are you into?
That is a very broad question. I wouldn't necessarily narrow it down to sort of one genre. Like some people say, oh yeah, I like metal or I like whatever. Literally, as long as it's got a good beat, a good melody, I'm in. I listen to sort of anything from pop that you hear on Radio 1 right through to sort of black metal. As long as it's good musically, I'll listen to it really. And to be honest, I've always been the same. When I first got into music, it was sort of like, you know, your Blink 182 and your Green Day and that sort of stuff. And I don't know, I just sort of, I'll still listen to it occasionally, but I just sort of grew out of it and started listening to sort of actual punk, and that went into metal and hardcore and that sort of stuff. And it's, yeah, just anything that's good, really.
Anything that's good and got a guitar in it.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. And so what is some of your favorite guitar effects? Because I mean, we first got talking when I was gratefully won that beautiful optical trend, which is you know, it's an amazing piece of kit which we'll come on to, but it's far fetched from the sort of fuzz and overdrive. So what sort of effects do you like?
I can't see any situation where I have a pedal board that's not got at least one delay pedal on it. So for me, it's the sort of time-based stuff, the delays and the reverbs. See, for me, I've always got at least two delays, and one of them is just a standard quarter, and one of them is usually like a dotted eighth. And it's amazing what you can do with just those two pedals, sort of rhythmic stuff. I love anything like that. And using that as a bass, you can sort of add your trem, your reverb, your phaser, whatever, and build from that. But I think a delay is a very good sort of starting point for 99% of stuff, really. So yeah, for me, if I had to pick one pedal, it'd be a delay pedal.
All right, wow. And I mean, the sort of other modulation effects, you know, your phasers and stuff, you know, your flanges and stuff like that. Are you into all that sort of stuff as well, or?
I've had sort of a love-hate relationship with modulation. When it's just me sort of playing in my garage and I switch all these effects and I think, oh yeah, this sounds great. But I'm yet to sit in a studio and think, you know what this needs? This needs a big 80s flanger. So for me, if I'm sat in my garage, yeah, I'll stick everything on and love it. But I think there's a time and a place for a lot of modulation stuff, really, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, that's so true. I've got, I mean, even the rotary sim pedal. I mean, I love it, and I love playing around with it at home. But it's like it's finding the times to interject that into the songs in the bands, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've got a few pedals like that, absolutely, for sure. And sort of effects builders that are out today, so you boutique builders and also a lot of some of the mainstream builders, because I mean there's so many people building stuff, manufacturing stuff. What are some of the builders and manufacturers that inspire you and that you like?
Well, I mean, if we look at just sort of UK-based boutique guys, you've got sort of TateFx, you've got Thorpy, Hello Sailor, you've got Chevtone, and they're all doing great stuff. I keep seeing stuff popping up all over sort of Instagram, Facebook, whatever. But I think nowadays with sort of the internet and sort of groups like sort of your group, it's more accessible to a lot of people. So you'll get just random kids that are building a kit, or they've found something online and they look great. Like it's quite scary, really, you know what I mean? As a builder. But yeah, it's just so accessible to people. So there's a lot of great people building. But I mean, if you sort of take it up a peg, I love sort of Earthquaker devices, Chase Bliss, that sort of stuff. They're all doing really sort of technical, great pedals, really. And yeah, they're really sort of pushing the boundaries of what can be done at the minute.
Yeah, it's quite exciting, and you're quite right in the fact that there's a lot of you know, people trying out kits and things like that, and it bodes well for the future. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say we're kind of in the golden era, and yeah, we are. But I think saying that we're in the golden era kind of suggests that maybe it's going to end at some point. But I'm not so sure, because there are lots of people, like you say, the youngsters and the building kits. It's going to carry on, I think.
Yeah. I think, like you said, we are in a golden age, but when you look back through history, you've got like the original fuzz boxes and your fuzz faces, your Octavias, that sort of stuff, and they're still sticking around. But as I mentioned earlier, you look at Chase Bliss stuff, for example, and it's like a spaceship. It's akin to the sort of rack units you used to have in the 80s. And while we might be in the golden age where we are now, I don't think it's going to end, but it's definitely going to change and evolve into something, something different. Who knows what it is, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, and who knows what it's going to be. And I've said this to a few times with a few builders, and like, you take the simple reverb effect. Like 20 years ago, you got plate, hall, room, spring, and that was about it. And it's a simple effect, reverb.
Yeah.
Yet you look at it now, 20 years on, 15 years on, and all of a sudden you've got, you know, octaves on it, it's ambient. And all of a sudden, a simple effect like reverb is turned on its head, and it's completely different to what it was 15, 20 years ago. And then you take builders like Frank at FFX Pedals, you know, a simple boost, and he's brought out his all-you-can-boost pedal.
It looks absolutely great. Yeah,
it's phenomenal. You know, the functions and versatility that pedal's got is phenomenal. A simple boost. You know, it's and you mentioned ThorpyFx there. I've had the good fortune of running through a few ThorpyFx this afternoon, and you know, his siren screams. It's a phenomenal pedal. You really crack it. But so what led you on to opening up a guitar effect and see what was going inside and maybe changing things, or what's the story on that one for you?
So it goes back a bit further for me, this. I used to have a Korg, micro Korg synthesizer, and I did a cardinal sin, and I'm sure you'll know all about this. I plugged in the wrong power adapter.
Hey! So, you're in good company.
And I went to my local music shop, and they gave me this quote for fixing it, a couple of £100, and I thought, well, that's nearly the price of what I paid for it. So I thought, let's just have a look inside and see what crack is with this. And I opened it up, and obviously, to someone that's not really savvy with electronics like I wasn't back then, it looked like a spaceship. So did a bit of digging on the internet and ended up getting it working. It took me a few tries, but I ended up getting it working. And I remember thinking, hey, it's all right, this. And it just sort of snowballed from there, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go directly to building guitar pedals. I used to do a thing called circuit bending, which is basically, well, the way that I got into it was like children's, you know, like toy pianos and things like that.
Yep.
And getting a piece of wire and joining two connections together and thinking, oh, this sounds cool. So putting a switch on it and sort of modding these sort of kids' toys and making instruments out of them, really.
Yeah.
And that's what got me into sort of designing circuits, and eventually, which led to making guitar pedals. So yeah, quite an odd avenue to get into it, really.
And what were the first sort of pedals that you really made with a kind of a view to, you know, making it a commercial enterprise? You know, your first kind of serious pedals, if you like. What were they?
So the first ever pedal I made, I've actually got it here.
Me.
So it looks a bit different to when I first made it. It's been sort of refinished 3 or 4 times, this. But it's basically a modified Electra. It's classed as an overdrive or a distortion or whatever. But the story behind that, Electra made a guitar way back when, and it had a load of onboard effects in it, and the distortion was one of the effects in that. And again, it's heavily documented on the internet. So I thought, what's a nice, simple guitar pedal to sort of look at? And this was minimal parts, sounded decent. So I thought, yeah, I'll have a go at that. And yeah, so I made a few of them and sold them to sort of friends and people who were friends of friends that had heard about it and wanted one. And yeah, that's basically how I got into it. Just this simple overdrive pedal, like I said, but it sounds great. And in actual fact, like I said, this is the first one that I made. And then when I sort of started making it into a business, it turned it into this one. So it's basically the gain knob on full, ripped off. So we've just got a volume knob on this one. And that then evolved into this tiny one knob overdrive. So yeah, that's the first pedal that I ever made, and that's still one that I'm selling today.
Wow, fantastic. And when did you actually take the decision that, you know, you're going to make Sight and Sound Effects a commercial enterprise? And where does the name Sight and Sound Effects come from?
So Sight and Sound Effects, when I designed my first pedal, I thought, what can I call this? What can I call, if I were to start a business in the distant future, what would I call this enterprise? And in my infinite wisdom at 17 years old or wherever, I thought, well, it sounds good and it looks all right as well, so we'll call it Sight and Sound Effects. And it just kind of stuck. There's no sort of cool story. That's as simple as it gets. And to be honest, I always find it odd when someone says, oh, you're a business or you're a manufacturer or whatever. To me, I'm just a guy in my garage building pedals. If people like it, great. I've never been in it to make money. It's always been about the love of the craft for me. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of builders out there that'll put, say, for example, a phaser that they're not particularly in love with, but there's a market for it, so they'll make a phaser to fill that voided market.
Yeah.
For me, it's always come from not being able to get the sounds that I want otherwise. So, like, for example, my pedals, I only make sort of maybe 10 or 20 of each unit before moving on to something else. And the reason for that is it's not because I want it to be sort of exclusive or limited. Like, for example, with the Hierophant Tremolo, I've built so many of them and think, yeah, this is great, until it's been sat on my pedal board for 6 months and I'm thinking, you know what, I could tweak this and make it better.
Yeah.
So then it goes on to version 2, and that's the reason for it. I'm constantly thinking, I could improve this, I could improve this again. It just goes from there, really, for me.
Well, that's you know, and it'll probably be a good point to bring up when I won one of your Hierophants tremolos. But you know, that passion that you're saying, and not really wanting to make money and having the focus on, you know, not making money but doing something that you love, and the money comes secondary, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think a lot of the